Yeah, I know. And then I was like, but my audio isn't recording. Yeah. And I was kind of mad because it's like, oh, here, come over, like, here. Oh, I was kind of mad because I was like, my audio didn't record, and like that's the whole point is that I'm like talking the whole time, you know? Yeah. Look behind me. Welcome back to Minecraft. I know I said I was gonna do a mining video today where I don't talk, but I was thinking, I was kind of overthinking this. That's honestly should be the name of this series is overthinking, overthinking incorporated. I'll leave them on their own. Um, I was overthinking about how much I wish I was taught math better uh, in school because math is one of those things. My recording just cut out. Math is one of those things where I feel like you either get it or you don't get it, and if you don't get it, you really kind of wish you got it because it's one of those things that's just like I know, Hugo. It's one of those things that's just completely abstract, unable to be mastered unless you just get it, unless it just clicks with you. And luckily for me, it just kind of clicked with me. I've always been good at school. I've always been good at memorizing stuff. Like even recently, like I have these in-class essays for one of my classes where you have to come in and you have to write an essay by hand in the course of an hour. And it's one of those things that's like I I suck at writing essays, but I am good at writing an essay beforehand and then just memorizing it word for word. And so this entire last semester, that's what I did. I literally would write a whole essay. I don't know why I'm doing this in a weird way. I would write a whole essay and then I would just spend the entire day like reciting it to myself and with like different pronunciations so I would remember the different parts. It was it worked. It was very, very functional. I just wasn't a huge fan of coming into class and writing a whole essay from scratch. That did not feel like a very plausible thing. In an hour, to write like a 500 word essay in an hour, it's possible, but you have to be writing like the whole freaking time. So, all this to say, I've always been good in school, but I was just kind of thinking like, I got this video of a kid who looked like she was, forgive me, 6 or 7 years old, and she was doing calculus. Now, calculus has a scary name, especially if you don't know math, but here's basically what calculus is in a nutshell. You know, like a normal, like a graph, a line graph. I'll pull up an image. A line graph, you know how to get the slope of the line graph, right? It's rise over run. That's essentially, without going too into details, that's what a derivative is finding the slope of any kind of function or graph at all points on the graph. And so this kid was taking a derivative of a cosine function. And she says the derivative, this is in Spanish, by the way, because I don't know, I just get Spanish recommended to me. This kid is like, the derivative of cosine is negative sine. And it kind of made me angry, I'm not gonna lie. Because here's the thing that kid, I bet, could not tell you why that's the derivative of cosine. That kid who knows for a fact that the derivative of cosine is negative sine has really no reason to believe that. I believe it's just memorization. As you can see why this kind of is on topic. I've always been great at math in school. That's always been my number one subject. But it kind of made me mad when I saw this kid who is like 7 years old doing math and just reciting these facts. because that's really not how it should be taught. I feel like a kid, or not a kid, a student should learn math and why math is the way it is. Not just like, oh, the derivative of cosine is negative sine. They should be learning why that is. And I know I'm getting mad at a 7-year-old girl, but it got me thinking, when I was taking my calculus class back in high school, in my senior year, I was really good at it because I was really good at memorizing all these random, like niche little things. I was really good at memorizing that to take the derivative of a function involving division, you remember these little memorization devices that's like low d high minus high d low, square the bottom, and off we go. It's like, yeah, but I don't know how to take the derivative of that. I just know that that's like the way you do it. So, and I'm really not gonna try and get into math that much. I kind of just, or not like the nitty gritty of math, because I understand math really isn't for everyone. But I just wish that math was taught way better, because calculus is one of those things that is very, excuse my pun, but it's very integral to higher level education in STEM. A lot of people who are taking STEM have to learn calculus, but the way they learn it is through pure memorization. It's not math. It's the same thing that I was doing in my, it was a Buddhist philosophy class that I was taking, where I was just memorizing the essay. It's the exact same thing. If you're good at school, you'll be good at calculus. You'll be good at this Buddhist philosophy class. You'll be good at, I don't know, just memorizing stuff. I also took a biology class in my like second semester of college. That was pure memorization. It was a zoology biology class where you just memorize the like the taxon of all these random different species of animals. I guess what I'm trying to say is I wish school was a little bit more about learning and less like just about about getting good grades. Because for me personally, I'm fantastic at getting a good grade. I am, applause worthy at getting a good grade. And it's kind of sad because I think about all these classes like my biology class. I basically learned every single species on Earth. I learned stuff from sea sponges to sea stars to bugs on the ground to birds in the sky to even dinosaurs, chimpanzees, monkeys, humans, butterflies, crocodile. That's what my dad says it. Crocodiles, alligators, everything. You name it. I learned this stuff. But I learned the most baseline information. That's like, ooh, did you know a centipede doesn't actually have 100 legs? It has like somewhere in the range of like 82. It's like, who cares? I learned the most basic information that no one is actually ever going to care about or remember. But I learned it because I just had to get a good grade. And I remember studying for that class. It was 80 questions, multiple choice was the final. It was a Scantron, and I just had to fill in some bubbles. Not just some bubbles, 80 different bubbles. And I guess that makes me a genius when it comes to Biology 101. I don't know. I don't remember anything from there. I could not tell you anything I learned in biology other than like uh that uh precisely. Now calculus for me is different. Math is different because I'm in I'm studying computer engineering in college right now. And with computer engineering, I do use math pretty frequently. Excuse me? This is a pretty weird thing. Huh. What a weird generation. Um, I use calculus quite a bit. So I've actually gotten better and better about learning calculus, but I can tell you firsthand that in my calculus class, I did not learn a single thing about calculus because I just had to memorize stuff. I just had to memorize, like, when someone tells you to take the derivative of a function with division, you do low d high minus high d low, square the bottom, and off we go. You don't do anything else. You don't look for anything. You just do that, and there you go. You know calculus now. And I remember being in my calculus class back in high school, and like I said, I'm good at memorization, but the people around me weren't. The people around me were not very school centered people. It's just you had to take a math class, and if you were lucky enough back in like seventh grade to move on to a higher level math class, and that means by 12th grade, you're still in that higher level math class. You're still going to be taking calculus. And while I was good at it, my friends at my table group like weren't as good. And luckily for me, I was actually really invested in calculus. I actually went home and looked up YouTube videos that explained calculus a little bit more in depth because I was really interested in it. Now, and that's not going to be a very common thing for high schoolers, 17, 18-year-olds. Like, that's not going to be a thing. And when my friends at my like table group were asking me like, how the heck do you do this? I really tried my best to teach them. And I want to say I think I did a good job because one of my friends was like, after the final, they caught up with me and it was just like, I was like, hey, question number 3, that was like I don't even remember, but like that was like chain rule and division rule, right? I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh my god, I only remembered that because of like you. I was like, let's go. But even then, it's like, it's just memorization. I think calculus is such a cool idea. I think the history of calculus is so cool. The idea that someone like Isaac Newton invented the fundamental theorem of calculus and he kept it to himself for a long time. And another scientist was like, hey, I think you've been working on this. I think I came to the exact same conclusion as you. And he compared notes, and Isaac Newton was such a baby back in the day. This other scientist, on his own will, came up with calculus at the same time. And Isaac Newton shunned him from like whatever scientific community they were both in because Isaac was like the freaking head of it. If you want to learn more about that, it's on a podcast called The Rest is Science. That's hosted by Vsauce, Michael Stevens, and Hannah Fry. It is such a good podcast for people who find science interesting, but don't want to get like the nitty gritty about like, you know, the boring stuff. They're not balancing chemistry equations. They're talking about how like I don't know, cool stuff with like water. They made a video about like why do people cry. It's just super interesting stuff, and they deep dive so far into it. And that's why their name is The Rest is Science, because they skip over the stuff that's like boring and they just say, well, the rest of that is science. Yeah, I think stuff like that is just so freaking cool. And I'm not getting religious or anything. I'm not trying to be like what do you call it? Like controversial or whatever, but like there was this one mathematician back in the day who basically realized there is no biggest number, right? You can just count forever and ever and you'll never arrive at the largest number because someone else could just say like that number plus 1. And so like while infinity is a concept, you'll never reach infinity. There is like no real infinity, no documented infinity. You know, if someone counts 3 kajillion things, someone else could probably count 3 kajillion and 1 things. And there's this mathematical concept called the power set, and that basically says any set of items, you can basically rearrange it to make a set that is every possible set of those items just rearranged in different ways. And you get a larger set, no matter what. And you do that infinitely, you will always get a larger set. And you will never get, you'll never reach like an infinite set, but you will always get a larger set. There is always a larger set that's after it. This mathematician brought this to the Christians around him and said, hey, this is what the mathematician said. He was like, hey, I don't think there's a God because there is no highest order. There is no infinity that you can achieve. There's always going to be something bigger. I believe he got hung. I believe he was completely, brutally murdered because people just didn't agree with that. And again, I'm not trying to say anything like political or religious, but like I think stories like that are so interesting. And especially in high school, where you have a full like 9 months to learn a subject, as opposed to college where you only get like a semester, or some people even some schools have like quarters. College is so fast paced, but in high school, I really feel like they should be teaching you how to learn, not teaching you like math, like ideas of like, oh, low d high minus high d low, square the bottom off we go. Like that stuff is so useless in the real world. But learning those like fun facts about calculus, where it's like, this was, you know, Isaac Newton basically had to find the relationship like for, what do you call it? Like the orbits of the planets. You would expect them to be circular. And Isaac Newton had this whole thing called uniform circular motion. But for some reason, the planets did not orbit in circles. They orbited in ellipses, which is like an oval. And like, what was his response to that? He invented calculus. Like he did this at like 25 years old. Like, this is the cool stuff, in my opinion, when it comes to math. And again, if any of this sounds interesting to you, I would recommend that you listen to that podcast, The Rest is Science. It's full of stuff like this, where it's just the cool stuff, the stuff that's actually interesting, the stuff that you want to remember. It makes you want to learn. Me personally, I'm, I don't know if this is the right way of saying it, but I'm burdened with the love of learning and the desire for the truth. It's a pretty noble burden, I would say. I feel like the truth is a pretty noble thing to aspire to. But for me, I'm very all or nothing on the truth and nothing else. And this kind of stems to, if you've listened to like the first episode of this, I talked about how I can recognize the truth. I'm actually really good at finding the truth in day-to-day like critical thinking, logical thinking, all this kind of stuff. This is the type of stuff I'm really good at, and it's probably why I was good in school. But what I am obnoxiously bad at is believing the truth. I cannot believe a single word I say. And I feel like that's a burden because I really always want the truth. And that makes me completely uninterested in like my emotions or like believing the truth. And it's something I really want to work on because I think that I'm nerfed, if you will. I'm nerfed. I can't believe myself. Even I can come to these fantastic conclusions about a lot of things in my life. A lot of struggles, a lot of just impossible problems I feel like I can solve. But I will never believe it. Have you ever heard that like would you rather question? Or like will you press the button? Like your superpower is you always know the truth. Or you always are correct. But the downside is no one will ever believe you. I'm not saying I'm always correct. I'm saying I'm trying my best to always like discover the truth. Just in general about life. But my burden is I don't believe myself. Would you press that button, by the way? Let me know. If you basically like a superpower, some supernatural ability, if you had this ability to just always be correct. Someone is like, what's the temperature outside? You just on a whim, you're like, oh, it's like 78 degrees. And it's like exact right on the dot. What's that in Celsius? Oh, it's like 25. I don't know what that is, but like you would get that right. Would you take it? And no one will believe you. Someone asks you what the weather is it going to rain today? You're like, yeah, it's going to rain. It's about like 60 degrees today. They're going to be like, nah. Or maybe it's like, oh, my cat's turning like 15 this year. I wonder how long she has left to live. You would be burdened with that kind of knowledge too. You could immediately spurt out like, your cat's going to die in 8 months. And I mean, in that case, it'd be lucky because no one would believe you. But it's also kind of spooky. Because, you're burdened with the incredible truth, but no one believes you. I don't know. I don't even know if I would press that button. The truth is such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing to not be clouded by delusion. But at the same time, like, it can be overwhelming. Sometimes the truth is not what you want. Sometimes the truth is a little ugly. I'm sure we've all had experiences where we, learn something about our lives and it just doesn't like stack up to what we would have wanted it to be. I think regardless of whether or not you want the truth in your life or whether or not you want to be right all the time, I feel like critical thinking is the most important skill you can attain from school. Sure, you could understand, like that 7-year-old girl, you could understand that the derivative of cosine is negative sine. Sure, you can memorize all these quirky little, memorization things where it's like, oh, low-de high, high-de low, whatever I've been saying this whole time. But what if you could just like come up with that? What if someone asked you like, "Hey, what's the derivative of this?" And you're just like, "Oh, I've never taken a single derivative in my life. What is a derivative?" And they say, "Oh, it's a rate of change for a function." And you're just like, "Cool. Sure, I can do that." And not like you know anything about derivatives, but you can just kind of critically think your way through it. Like, wouldn't that be such a superpower? The the gift of just being a fantastic critical thinker. I think that is mayhaps, whoa, big word, mayhaps. Can you use that in a sentence? What's the country of origin? I think that's probably one of the coolest things any human can do. Is just think really hard about a certain idea and come to the conclusion and be right. Not because someone told them the answer or not because the answer even mattered, but because they went searching and they succeeded. I think that is so cool. I think of Buddha, the Buddha, the first, I don't know if he was technically the first Buddha. There was something about like, I don't know. But like this whole thing about Buddha like sat under a tree for a long ass time and then eventually like came back enlightened. Just God. How much aura, you know, like how much aura it would be to live a life of sadness, depression, and suffering. You go under a tree and you're just like, why am I suffering? Well, it's because of greed. Okay, so what if I just eliminate greed? I won't suffer anymore, right? Okay, I eliminated greed and I'm not suffering anymore. I'm living actually a fantastic life. Like, imagine you could just do that. Imagine you were just like the first person to get that done. That's why I think critical thinking is so cool. And when I was taking my Buddhist philosophy class, although I didn't like the essays, I loved the lectures. I absolutely adored going to those classes and hearing my professor talk about just how smart these Buddhists were. And I don't know why this blows my mind in particular. A spawner, that's not good. Let's see what we got for loot. Yay, an avocado. Oh wait, low key, golden apple. Forgot about that. I just saw the rotten flesh. Oh, iron. Don't really need the bones. The horse armor is pretty good. I'll keep the leather. Let me put all my cobblestone in this chest. Okay, we got a golden apple, some horse armor, and a name tag. Oh, I'll name Hugo. Oh, but that's a lot of iron. I don't know if I'm gonna name Hugo, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if Hugo deserves a name that badly. We know his name. What was I saying? Yeah, for some reason, when I hear about people being smart a long time ago, it blows my mind. Because oh, because being smart a long time ago means being smart without like a phone or a computer. And like that just feels unbelievable to me. Like if I can't Google the answer, the answer must not exist, right? But that's the thing. If you're a fantastic critical thinker, I mean, usually the easiest answer is to just Google. But what if you could just think hard enough about a situation and like answer your own question? That's why a lot of times, and I did this in like I said before, like I was helping my friends in calculus learn it a little better. I would try to ask them questions because I feel like that is the absolute best way to learn something is to be quizzed on it, or to like test your mastery. Like I think about this stuff all the time. I can memorize stuff super easily, but if I ever have to like derive stuff naturally, whether it's some kind of math equation or whatever, I just can't for the life of me do it. It's not in me. I can do it if I try really hard and waste a lot of time doing it. But at the end of the day, like if I'm under pressure, if it's like a test at school or something, I freeze. I'm completely unable to like derive something that has been taught to me. Because most of the time in school, it's just memorization. And like I said, I'm in computer engineering. I do a good amount of math. And for tests that are revolved around math, pretty much every time you're given a formula sheet. But if the formula you need is not on that sheet, say goodbye to that question because you're not going to get it right. And it's such a sad thing because I just wish that math was taught like you didn't even need a formula sheet. You just understood how these things related to each other. Like for example, I took physics in high school, but I took physics before I took calculus. And unfortunately for like 15-year-old me, physics and calculus really should be taught at the same time. But I was in high school, right? I was just taking classes in the order I was given. It was kind of like, I don't know. I didn't even know calculus would apply to physics. And, okay, I'm going to briefly go over a very small concept, well, a large concept in calculus, but I'm going to do it very briefly so you kind of understand. When you take the integral of a function, similar to how you take the derivative of a function, when you take the integral, imagine you're finding the area underneath the curve, underneath the graph. So like, for example, a linear, like a straight line graph. If you find the area underneath that graph, you have found the integral, right? This is a huge thing in physics because the acceleration of an object tells you a lot about how far it moves, how far it doesn't move, where it goes, where it doesn't go. And it tells you this because of calculus. So there are basically three like fundamental things you can measure in physics, in like physics 1, like high school level physics. One is something called displacement. It's basically how far you moved. If you're driving in your car and you know, your destination is 12 miles away from where you started, you displaced yourself 12 miles. Like that's, yeah. Then there's a thing called velocity. You can kind of think about this synonymous with the word speed, although like when you get into the nitty gritty, they are different. Velocity is speed. If I'm traveling 60 miles an hour, that's my speed. Miles per hour, distance per unit of time. Whereas displacement is just distance. So that's kind of an interesting idea, right? Displacement is just measured in distance. Most commonly in high school physics, it's in meters. Then velocity, or speed, is measured in meters per second. Again, unit of distance divided by unit of time. So it's almost like you take the unit and you just divide it by time. Interesting. We'll keep moving. Then, from velocity, there is something called acceleration. Now this you can kind of think about as if you were, pressing down the acceleration pedal in your car. When you press the acceleration pedal, you accelerate. You don't just move distance. That acceleration pedal, the more you press it, the more you accelerate. You are directly controlling your acceleration. So what is acceleration? What unit is it measured in? Think about that for a second. Like, yeah, I understand, like, if I'm in the car and something is 12 miles away, then the displacement is 12 miles. If I drive on the freeway and the freeway speed limit is 60 miles an hour, then the velocity I went was 60 miles an hour. But acceleration, like, where is the meter on my car that tells me my acceleration? And the truth is, there is no acceleration meter in your car. But acceleration, or keep this in mind, displacement is measured in, we'll say meters. No, we'll say miles. In miles, you have displacement. In miles per hour, you have velocity. And then, in miles per hour, in other words, miles divided by hours, you get acceleration. Isn't that kind of interesting? Now, it's kind of hard to, kind of understand what that means. But if you think about it, displacement is a very one-note kind of thing. It's just like, how far did I go? I went this far. Velocity kind of has a thing with it. It's related to time. You gotta have the distance you traveled, and you gotta have the time it took you to move that far. It's like that famous what do you call it? The famous the like two trains are approaching the same spot. Train A is going this many, whatever. It's like that. In other words, it's rise over run. Think about it. If displacement is graphed with respect to time, how far did you move and in what time did you do it? When you find the slope of that graph, you get velocity. Because the slope of that graph would be how far you moved, aka distance, divided by how long it took you, aka time. Distance over time, miles per hour. That is a derivative. That's a calculus topic. And same thing can be said for acceleration with with velocity. If you have the velocity plotted on a graph with respect to time, if you find your velocity over a certain period of time, you get, think about it. Okay. If your velocity is measured in miles per hour, and like I established, acceleration is in miles per hour. Think about this. It's miles per hour divided by hours. Just like how it was miles divided by hours. It's just rise over run again. Except this time, instead of miles divided by hours, you have miles per hour, velocity, divided by hours, time. This is a really cool idea in calculus. Unfortunately, I wasn't taught that back in the day. Back when I was 15 years old, that was not... What are you doing here? that type of thing was not taught to me when I was 15. They basically just told me, if you find the slope of this displacement graph, you get velocity. And I was like, why? And they were like, I don't know. Like, what the heck? But it's such a cool idea. And with physics especially, it's so cool because you get to see it work like live. You get to see this math work perfectly in the real world. You know, you drop something and you see it perfectly model gravity. Or, you know, you drop something in water, you see it, the buoyancy, the numbers on the paper, like, oh, you can just predict stuff with math. It's so cool. But unfortunately, I didn't know these relationships had anything to do with calculus. I didn't even know what calculus was. Probably like most people who are hearing this, calculus felt like a daunting topic. It felt like, oh, calculus is for like smart people. I don't do that. You know? I just find it so cool to just, if I was able to, when I was 15, like know calculus, because calculus isn't hard. It really isn't. It's just a couple of rules. That's all that calculus ever really is you learn a couple rules and you apply them. And that's kind of it. You don't really have to be good at math. You don't have to be good at adding or subtracting. You just have to be good at learning. Oh. And for someone like me, someone who really likes learning, now I'm starting to wish I was like that 7-year-old girl. I wish I learned calculus back then. But that's the thing. I don't think that she learned calculus. I think she just learned simple, like, facts. Something like the derivative of cosine is negative sine. That doesn't mean anything to anyone. It's correct on the paper, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But I like learning. And I just wish that, like, teachers, especially in high school, also liked to see people learn. Because that was kind of like my experience with high school and calculus. When I was like teaching my friends some calculus topics, it was really cool when they had that aha moment where they're like, oh, I get it now. It just brightened my day. And if more people could learn cool things and see them work in the real world, and if more people were taught that learning is cool, because in school you're never taught that learning is a good thing. Like, sure, they're definitely not gonna like shun learning in school. Like, they're gonna promote it, but they're never gonna be like, this is why you should learn, like the way I'm doing. I don't know if any teachers have ever been like, learning is the cool thing about school. It doesn't matter if you understand quantum physics or whatever the hell you want to learn. What you should care about is that you're learning. Who cares about the grade? You should just learn because you want to learn. Sorry, I kind of had to burp there. So yeah, if that 8-year-old Mexican girl is watching, just know I'm coming for you. I'm gonna find you. No, I'm not. I promise. But if I do find you, I will gladly teach you calculus, and I'll show you not just what you have to learn, but why it's pretty cool. to kind of get off the STEM side of stuff, the math, the physics, the science, I also really liked in 7th grade for me learning about color theory in my like art class that I took. Color theory was pretty dang cool. And also getting to see it like actually work on like a canvas. My entire life I kind of knew that when you mix like what red and yellow, you get orange. That's been something I've been taught, but realistically, I kind of never saw it in action, if I'm being honest. And if I did, I don't know, I forgot. It was probably pretty boring. But it wasn't until I took an art class in 7th grade, and keep in mind, I was one of those people that like, was like annoying about how like I suck at art. Oh, I was kind of pick me about how much I hated art, but I had to take it, so I did. When we were learning color theory and like complementary colors and like these colors mixed together and here's the actual paint and you can do it yourself and we're gonna paint some pictures or some paintings. I mean, we'll be painting and you'll be like actually putting these things to good use and you can actually mix colors to get 1,000 different shades of one color. Actually learning and doing that stuff was so cool to me. Again, I'm not good at painting. I'm not good at drawing. I still am not. And we had to, like the final, I don't know if it was a final, but like at the end of the year, we had to paint a whole thing of like a big, like painting of a fish. That was like the end thing is, you paint a fish. And the idea was you have to pick one color for the background and one color for the foreground. And that's all you get. You can have different shades of these colors, but you only get one color. But by the end of that year, I was so enthralled with color theory. I was like, I can't wait to get started. I got so many colors in mind. Yeah. And my like the drawing aspect of it, I wasn't good at. I really still wasn't good at that. And I think that's more of a skill rather than like a theoretical thing that you can learn. You kind of have to build that up over time. But like painting and mixing colors and getting the color I wanted and like realizing, oh, if I want like a warmer shade of blue, I should put red into it. I shouldn't put orange because orange will make it brown. And I don't want brown. I still want it to be kind of blue. Like just knowing that kind of stuff and knowing my complementary colors and that was lucky. Knowing my complementary colors and my like primary and secondary colors and all this stuff. It filled me with so much confidence at the end of the school year. Because again, I was like, I can't draw, I can't paint, I've never been able to, and I never will. I'm just not that guy. I like math, I don't like painting. But when I learned it, it was so cool. It was so fun. And I remember like the first time I learned how to use a camera, like actually. I never like watched any YouTube videos, I didn't take a class on cameras or anything, but I did, what do you call it? Like I bought a camera. I bought a camera because it was on sale, low key. I got a Canon Rebel T7. It's a pretty ubiquitous like beginner camera for a lot of people. And I remember like setting it to auto and just letting it take the picture for me. I was like, wow, the pictures are so good. But it wasn't until that I started just like experimenting with the like settings like shutter speed or aperture or ISO, white balance, that I learned what makes a photo a photo. And like learning how lenses work and like how does it zoom, and I start just asking these questions. And I mean, luckily now on YouTube you can just ask these questions in the search bar, and a wonderful video that's like a total deep dive, but still for beginners, will pop up, and you can learn everything you need to know about cameras in like 15 minutes. Well, like, it's such a gorgeous world we live in that we can just learn so much stuff so quickly, so efficiently. It's a shame that we don't do it. It's a shame that we don't do it, because learning is such a beautiful thing, and I just wish so hard that it was emphasized a little more. Because again, in school, I don't remember a lot of stuff I didn't care about, and I didn't really learn how to learn in school. I was just lucky that I like learning, you know? I just kind of got lucky. And I feel bad for people who are not as lucky as me, who did not learn how to learn, who didn't even want to learn how to learn. Because learning was associated with what you do in school. And what you do in school is just not learning. You don't learn, you memorize in school. That's the... You fight your hardest to get a good grade. That's all you do in school. Even in college. Like, I do learn some stuff in college, don't get me wrong, but am I worried about learning in my day-to-day life? Or am I worried about, like, just getting a good grade? Like, am I learning this because I want to learn it? Sometimes, for sure. Or am I learning this because I have to in order to get a good grade? So, moral of this story. You should love learning. And learning isn't as hard as you would think. What is hard is taking the first step. I think that's the hardest thing anyone can ever do, ever, is beginning a journey. That's something I struggle with. Like I said before, I really struggle with knowing the truth and believing it. I can, critically think through stuff. I love doing that. I love overthinking stuff. But when it comes to actually believing stuff, I'm awful. And actually acting on stuff, I am awful. I'm just the worst. So yeah, learning is not hard, I don't think. I think what is hard is getting yourself to learn, right? Like getting yourself, as like a metaphor, like getting yourself out of bed and getting yourself ready to learn. Rootin' tootin', ready for scootin'. So yeah, try to learn more. I think it's worth your time. Like I said, it's really not as hard as you make it seem to be. You might think that something like calculus, for example, is super daunting. And I'm not saying you should learn calculus, but I'm telling you, it's probably easier than you think. And most likely, I don't think learning is hard. I think we have a sort of relationship with learning that's intrinsically linked to school. And school, a lot of times, is hard. Emotionally and mentally. Like, sometimes you get bullied in school. Sometimes you feel like you get that fear of missing out. Like, what if I don't go to prom? What if I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend to go to prom with? There's all this, like, stuff that, like, school just almost ruins, I feel like a big thing when it comes to a big fear in a lot of people is the fear of dying alone. And I think that comes from school in a lot of ways. And not because I think that's been a fear for a long time. But it comes from that environment of pressure. someone putting pressure on you to, it could be your parents. Parents saying, hey, I want kids, I want grandchildren. Like, I feel like that's the most pressure you could put on someone. Hey, I want you to get married and, you know, fit into my definition of success. That's what I want you to do. Otherwise, you've disappointed me. Bye. Like, that's not what I feel like we should be doing to the next generation. Or the current generation, or any generation. It would just be nice if... Wouldn't it be nice if everyone got along? So cliche. But it's true. That would be a fantastic thing. And I'm going to go ahead and put on a full set, other than my boots, of iron armor. Don't I look spiffy? And with that, I'm going to call it an episode. I do want to thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Once again, I'm sorry that yesterday I kind of fudged my audio. I can assure you that I do not know the root of the problem, but I know how to fix it. And yeah, so hopefully that'll never happen again. It's a weird timing because I don't think this was the cause of the problem, but I spilled a little bit of coffee on the wire that oh, that's not good. On the wire that my headphones are plugged in, not my headphones, that my microphone is plugged into. I spilled just a little bit of coffee on the wire, not where it connects, not even like any kind of part of the wire that's like exposed. I spilled it right on the like plastic insulation of the wire. And I don't think it went through. It was just a tiny, excuse me, I'm burping a lot. It was just a tiny bit of like basically water. It's coffee, but coffee's not like gonna, it's not like corrosive or anything. Like, it's not toxic, it's basically water. I spilled coffee on an insulated part of this cable and I immediately dried it off, like, and somehow my microphone was all glitchy. But here's the kicker, because technically my microphone has two different sources that it inputs from. Wow, look at my crop screw. My microphone has two different like things I can select in OBS. One of them is like, it's called broadcast stream mix, and the other one is called sample. And they're both essentially the same. But for some reason, sample was the one that was buggy, or glitching out. But broadcast stream mix was completely clear. But usually they are the exact same quality. So, but like one was working completely fine, so I don't think it was a physical problem. Because if it was a physical problem, I think both would be harmed. So, again, I don't know what the cause of it was, but I can assure you it probably won't happen again. Also, I want to talk about my house. I fixed the awful spectacles, the glasses that I had, the birch glasses. It looked real bad. Also, in the last episode, I noticed the eyes were a little off center when I ended it. So I fixed that. I rounded out my house. I centered the door, gave it some windows. I think it looks pretty nice. I think it looks kind of like a coliseum. It's very small, but just like the roundness of it kind of looks like a coliseum. I might tower it up into like a second floor. If I do a second floor, then I'll definitely like have a roof. Maybe not a roof, but like I gotta have a floor for the second floor, right? But currently I like the way my house is going. We got a nice farm. We got a nice little area back here. I want to turn this place into like an area where I can fish. I think this place looks really nice. yeah, I'm excited to expand this. Isn't it crazy how this used to just be a lava pool in the middle of the woods, and now it's turning into a home with a farm, a dog, and I'm cutting down trees slowly but surely. I'm trying to get rid of all the birch trees because frick birch, you know? Boom. One Mexican down. But yeah, let me know if you want me to build anything. I will say, I like redstone building stuff. I like building stuff out of redstone. Problem is, most redstone stuff is pretty loud. So, you know, if you want me to build anything out of redstone, I would love to, but if it's like a loud thing that's kind of annoying, I might not do it. What the heck? But yeah, so thank you for all the support on these videos. I really enjoy reading your guys' comments. Uh, well, I didn't know you could do that. Um, means a lot to me that I can. I'm just playing Minecraft. You guys seem to like it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna keep trying to make it daily. Although I bet in 1 week or so, I'll probably switch it up to like every other day. So keep that in mind if you ever notice I didn't upload on a day. Like, hey, I'm a human, right? So I don't upload daily. I don't really want to, or I want to right now because I like it, but at some point I probably won't. But that's not the matter. Don't even think about that. It'll all be fine. So, from me and the gang, we'll see you next time. Deuces. Bye bye.